My younger son betrayed his brother with his 4-year girlfriend. The entire family rejected him when he announced the engagement, but karma struck when she abandoned him, and now he blames us for ruining his life. I'm 55 years old. I've been working in accounting for like 30 years, and I never thought the day would come when I'd have to write something like this about my own family. But here we are. What happened a few months ago basically destroyed my family, or at least split it in a way I never imagined possible, and I still can't believe my own son, Connor, did what he did. My wife Denise says, I should have seen the signs, that there was always something weird about the dynamic between the boys, but the truth is, you never expect this, you know? You never expect your younger son to betray your older son in the most devastating way possible. I guess I should start at the beginning, when the boys were little. Alexander, my oldest son, is 28 now, and Connor is 25. They were always different, like completely opposite in personality. Alexander was the responsible one, the one who got good grades without trying too hard, the one who always thought things through before acting. Connor was more impulsive, more charismatic too. He had that ability to instantly make everyone like him, but he was never as studious as his brother. Denise and I tried to treat them equally, give them the same opportunities, the same love, all that stuff good parents are supposed to do. They both went to college. Alexander studied engineering, and Connor studied communications, and they both went to study out of state where we live, Alexander first and then Connor 2 years later. It was during college that Alexander met Isabel. I think he was like 20 when they started dating, maybe 21. I don't remember exactly. What I do remember is that the first time he introduced her to us, Denise told me later, when we were alone, that there was something about that girl that didn't quite sit right with her, but I thought it was just the typical nerves of a mother meeting her son's girlfriend. Isabel seemed nice. She was pretty. She was studying psychology, if I remember correctly, and most importantly, Alexander looked happy with her. They dated for over 4 years. I mean, it was a serious relationship, the kind you assume will eventually end in marriage. They came together at Christmas, Thanksgiving, spent time with us, and I came to consider her basically part of the family already. Connor obviously met Isabel because she came to family gatherings and all that. At first, I didn't think anything weird. They were cordial with each other, normal. But looking back now, with everything I know, I wonder when exactly it all started. Was it something gradual, or was it a specific moment where they decided to betray Alexander that way? I don't know, and I'll probably never know because Connor refuses to talk to us about the details. He just says they fell in love and that's it, as if that justified everything. The thing is that like 8 months ago, Alexander called us completely devastated. It was a Sunday afternoon. I remember because Denise and I were watching a movie, and the phone rang. I answered and heard my oldest son crying on the other end, like sobbing in a way I hadn't heard since he was a child. My heart sank immediately. I thought something terrible had happened. An accident or something. I asked him what was wrong and he could barely speak. But eventually he managed to tell me that Isabel had cheated on him, that she had ended the relationship, that he had found messages on her phone with another guy. Denise grabbed the phone from me at that point because she heard something was wrong, and she spent like an hour talking to Alexander, trying to calm him down, telling him everything would be okay. That time heals wounds and all those things parents say when they don't know what else to say. What we didn't know at that moment, what Alexander didn't know yet either, was that the other guy was Connor. Alexander suspected that Isabel had been seeing someone. He had found deleted messages and strange behaviors. But she never gave him a name, never told him who the infidelity had been with. She just told him she had fallen in love with someone else and she was sorry but couldn't continue with him anymore. Imagine the pain of that, being with someone 4 years and being told they fell in love with someone else while they were with you. It's devastating. Denise and I were furious with Isabel. We sent her messages telling her she was a bad person. How could she do that to Alexander? All the typical things parents would do defending their son. Like 2 months passed. 2 months in which Alexander was trying to rebuild his life, going to therapy, focusing on his work, basically doing what you do when you get your heart broken. And then Connor posted a photo on Instagram with Isabel. A photo of them together, hugging, smiling, with a caption that said something like, "Finally I can share my happiness with the world," or some cheesy thing like that. Alexander called me again, but this time he wasn't crying. He was in shock, like he couldn't process what he was seeing. He told me, Dad, Connor is dating Isabel, and I thought he was confused, that maybe it was another girl who looked similar or something. But no, it was her. It was definitely Isabel. I called Connor immediately. I called him like 5 times in a row until he answered. And when he did, I asked him directly what the fuck was going on. If it was true he was dating his brother's ex. And he, with that calm voice he used when he knew he'd done something wrong but didn't want to admit it, told me, yes, that they had been officially dating for 2 months, but they had actually fallen in love much earlier. I asked him what that meant, much earlier, and he basically confessed they'd had an affair while Isabel was still with Alexander. He didn't use those exact words. He said something like, things happen naturally and they couldn't avoid their feelings. But I'm not an idiot. I understood perfectly what he was saying. I told him, Connor, you did that to your brother. You betrayed your own brother. How could you? And he immediately got defensive, saying he couldn't control who he fell in love with, that he and Isabel had a real connection, that Alexander would eventually understand. I told him Alexander would never understand, that what he had done was unforgivable, and he started yelling that I had always preferred Alexander, that he had always been the favorite son, that for once in his life he had found something good and I wanted to ruin it. Denise was listening to the conversation because I put it on speakerphone, and she was crying, shaking her head, whispering this can't be happening over and over. Alexander and Connor had one last conversation after that. Alexander called him. I don't know exactly what they said to each other because Alexander didn't want to tell us all the details. He said it was too painful to repeat. But he did tell us that Connor had tried to justify himself, saying he and Isabel were soulmates, that sometimes these things happen, that it wasn't anything personal against Alexander. Nothing personal. As if sleeping with your brother's girlfriend wasn't personal. Alexander told him he never wanted to see him again in his life, that for him Connor was basically dead and hung up. That was the last time they spoke, like 6 months ago already. We thought Connor would have the decency to keep his relationship with Isabel away from us, that he would understand what he had done, had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But no. 2 months later he showed up at our house unannounced, with Isabel, and announced they were getting married. Just like that, out of nowhere, he rang the doorbell on a Saturday morning. We opened the door, and there they were, her with a ring on her finger, and Connor smiling like everything was perfect. Denise literally closed the door in their faces. Connor knocked again and yelled from outside that they just wanted to share the news, that they hoped we could be happy for them. I opened the door again and told them to leave, that they weren't welcome in our home. But Connor insisted on coming in, pushed the door open, and came in with Isabel behind him. They sat in our living room like nothing horrible had happened, and Connor started telling us about their wedding plans, that they wanted to get married in spring, that they hoped the whole family would be there, that he understood things had been difficult, but it was time to get over the past and move forward. Isabel wasn't saying anything. She was just sitting there looking uncomfortable but not leaving either. I asked Connor if he really thought we were going to go to his wedding after what he had done to his brother, and he said yes, that we were his parents, and parents were supposed to support their children unconditionally. Denise exploded at that moment, yelled at him that he had lost that right when he betrayed his brother in the vilest way possible, that she wasn't going to celebrate a relationship that started with lies and deception. That's when we finally learned the whole truth. I demanded that Connor tell us exactly when it all started, how long he had been cheating on Alexander, and he at first didn't want to say, but Isabel started crying and admitted they had been secretly seeing each other for almost a year before Alexander discovered anything. A year. They had maintained an affair for a full year. They saw Alexander at family gatherings, acted like nothing while constantly betraying him. I told them to get out of my house and never come back. Connor tried to argue, but I literally grabbed him by the arm and pulled him out. Isabel ran out after him, and that was the last time I saw them in person. After that, I called Alexander to tell him what had happened, and he confirmed everything. He told us things we didn't know. Like that Connor had visited him several times during that year, stayed at his apartment, knew all the details of his relationship with Isabel, and all that time he was sleeping with her behind his back. And he told us that once Connor had given him advice on how to fix things with Isabel when she was acting distant. I mean, Connor knew exactly why she was distant, because he was the reason. But he still advised Alexander like he was a good concerned brother. It's the kind of betrayal you can't even fully process, you know? It's so twisted your brain can't accept it. My father, the boy's grandfather, found out about all this because Alexander called to tell him. My dad is like 80 years old but still sharp mentally, and when he heard the story, he was completely horrified. My father had always been very close to both grandsons, but what Connor did offended him at a level I hadn't seen before. Turns out my father had established trust funds for both boys years ago, basically money saved for when they needed to make big purchases, get married, buy a house, that kind of thing. Connor's fund had like $150,000 if I remember. Correctly, maybe more. My father called his lawyer and revoked Connor's fund immediately. All the money was redistributed. Part went to Alexander, part stayed in other family investments, but Connor didn't see a cent. But my father didn't stop there. He's from that generation where family honor means everything, and he decided the entire extended family needed to know what Connor had done. He sent a long, detailed message to all the uncles, aunts, cousins, all family members, explaining exactly what had happened. He didn't leave anything out. He told about the affair, the betrayal, the engagement, everything. The reaction was immediate and unanimous. Nobody, absolutely nobody in the family supported Connor. My brothers called me saying they were horrified. My cousins sent messages of support for Alexander. Even relatives on Denise's side, who technically weren't directly involved, said what Connor had done was unforgivable. Connor started receiving calls and messages from the entire family basically telling him not to count on them for the wedding, that what he had done was a disgrace, that he had dishonored the family. His cousin Jennifer, who had always been close to him, sent him a message saying she didn't want to talk to him again. His uncle Richard, my brother, told him he was a disappointment. One by one, family members distanced themselves from Connor and Isabel. It wasn't something we orchestrated, like we didn't go around asking people to reject them. It just happened naturally because everyone understood the gravity of what they had done. Isabel apparently couldn't handle the pressure. According to what we found out later, from a cousin of Connor's who still talked to him occasionally, just to know how he was, Isabel started to realize what it meant to marry Connor. It meant losing not just Alexander, who she had already lost, but an entire extended family. It meant she would never be accepted at family gatherings, that her future children wouldn't know, their grandparents on that side, that she would basically be isolated. And I think she also started to see Connor differently. Like when you're in the middle of an affair, everything is exciting and forbidden, but when it becomes your reality and you realize the real consequences, things change. Like 3 months after the engagement, Isabel called Connor and told him she couldn't marry him. Just like that, suddenly, she canceled everything. Connor called us that night, crying for the first time in years, saying it was all our fault, that we had ruined his life, that if we had accepted the relationship from the beginning, none of this would have happened. I told him, Connor, we didn't ruin anything. You ruined your relationship with your brother, and now you're paying the consequences of your actions. He started yelling that he hated Alexander, that Alexander had always been the favorite, that I was a bad father, that Denise was a bad mother, basically any hurtful thing he could think of. Denise told him we weren't going to tolerate that kind of conversation, that when he was ready to take responsibility for what he had done, he could talk to us again, but until then he wasn't welcome in our lives. We hung up, and that was basically the end of our relationship with Connor. That was like 3 months ago already. We haven't spoken to him since then. We don't know where he's living exactly. If he still has the same job, nothing. My mother, the boy's grandmother, Judith, tried to talk to him a couple of times, but he doesn't answer her either. He basically isolated himself from the entire family after Isabel broke up with him. And honestly, I don't know if we'll ever be able to repair this relationship. Part of me wants to believe he's my son, and will eventually find a way to forgive and move forward. But another part of me, the part that saw the pain in Alexander's eyes, feels what Connor did is unforgivable. Alexander is better now, honestly. He met a girl, Monica. She's like 26 years old. She's an elementary school teacher, and she's probably one of the most genuine and kind people I've met. We met her like 2 months ago when Alexander brought her to dinner, and the difference between her and Isabel is like night and day. Monica is authentic. There are no hidden agendas, no drama. She's just a good person who clearly loves my son very much. Alexander told us he's still processing everything that happened with Connor and Isabel, that he'll probably be processing it for years. But he's trying to focus on building something positive with Monica and not let the betrayal define the rest of his life. The craziest thing about all this is that supposedly Isabel tried to contact Alexander like a month ago. She sent him long messages saying she had made a terrible mistake, that she never should have done what she did, that Connor wasn't the person she thought he was, basically trying to reconcile with him. Alexander didn't even read all the messages. He just saw the first two, showed them to me, and then blocked her everywhere. He told me, "Dad, even if I wanted to forgive her, which I don't, I could never trust her again," and he's absolutely right. Once you betray someone that way, especially in such a calculated and prolonged manner, there's no going back. There's no way to rebuild that trust. The thing is that now I have one son who doesn't talk to me anymore, and another son who's barely starting to rebuild his life after a devastating betrayal. Denise cries. Sometimes at night, she doesn't make noise, but I know she's crying. And when I ask her what's wrong, she says she's thinking about Connor, about what kind of person he became, about whether we did something wrong raising him. I tell her no, that we raised two sons the same way, and only one decided to betray the other, that it's not our fault, but I know she still blames herself somehow. I also wonder sometimes if there were signs we didn't see, moments where we could have intervened, but the truth is I don't know if it would have changed anything. My father told me last week that I did the right thing supporting Alexander and rejecting Connor. He told me that sometimes being a parent means making difficult decisions, that it's not about supporting your children unconditionally no matter what they do, but about teaching them that actions have consequences and some things are simply wrong. He's right. I know he's right, but it still hurts. It hurts to think I might never have a relationship with Connor again. It hurts to think that my future grandchildren, if I have more, might never know each other because their parents don't speak. But at the end of the day, when I think about all this, I always come to the same conclusion. Connor made a conscious decision to betray his brother in the deepest way possible, and now he's living with the consequences of that decision. It wasn't us who ruined his life. It was himself. And until he can understand that, until he can take real responsibility for what he did without blaming everyone else, there's no path forward. Alexander told us recently that he's never going to forgive Connor, that relationship is dead to him, and although it breaks my heart to hear him say that, I completely understand. There are some betrayals that simply can't be forgiven, and this is one of them.